Imagine stepping into a physician's office, your head pounding from a fever, your body aching with an unknown illness. Instead of a stethoscope, instead of a prescription, the doctor reaches for a gleaming steel lancet. The proposed cure isn't a pill. The proposed cure isn't a tonic. It's to drain the very lifeblood from your veins. For over 2,000 years, this was the pinnacle of medical treatment. Bloodletting, deliberate removal of blood to prevent or cure disease, one of the longest running and most widely accepted practices in medicine. It was a brutal, often terrifying procedure, yet embraced by esteemed physicians and sought after by patients, peasants, popes. But did this crimson torrent truly offer healing, or was it a fatal misunderstanding? The sheer longevity of bloodletting is staggering. It wasn't a fringe treatment, it was mainstream medicine. A reminder, conviction can masquerade as truth, and the road to medical enlightenment was paved with good intentions that sometimes led to devastating outcomes. The roots of bloodletting stretch back into the mists of time, long before the gleaming scalpels of the Victorian era. Our journey begins in ancient Egypt, around 1000 BCE, where the practice is first documented in medical texts. The Egyptians, with their sophisticated understanding of embalming and anatomy, believed that illness was often caused by an excess or impurity of blood. Tomb paintings papyri depict physicians lancing veins, suggesting that letting blood was a common remedy. They saw the body as a network of channels, much like the Nile River that sustained their civilization. When these channels became blocked or contaminated, they needed to be cleared. For the Egyptians, opening a vein was a form of internal irrigation, a way to flush out the sickness and restore the natural flow of life. The practice was soon adopted and refined by the ancient Greeks, who sought to build a more systematic framework for medicine. While the Egyptians relied on a mix of magic and observation, the Greeks introduced philosophy and reason. Hippocrates, often hailed as the father of medicine, who lived in the 5th century BCE, did not invent bloodletting, but he integrated it into a revolutionary new theory. He proposed that the human body was governed by nature, and that disease was a natural process, not a punishment from the gods. Within this framework, he saw bloodletting as a tool to help the body heal itself. However, it was the influential Greek physician Galen of Pergamon, who lived in the 2nd century CE, who truly cemented bloodletting's place in Western medicine for the next 1500 years. Galen was a physician to Roman emperors and gladiators, and his anatomical studies, though often based on animal dissections, were considered infallible for centuries. The Romans, with their vast empire, spread Galen's doctrines far and wide, ensuring that the practice of draining blood would not only survive the fall of Rome, but would flourish for more than a millennium to come. To truly understand why bloodletting dominated medicine for so long, we must first grasp the doctrine of the four humors. Originated with the ancient Greeks, later perfected by Galen, the body was said to contain 4 fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile, each tied to an element: air, water, fire, earth. Each humor had heat and moisture qualities. Health, temperament, and appearance depended on balance. Perfect equilibrium meant a healthy person. Blood, air, hot and moist. Sanguine, cheerful and optimistic. Phlegm, water, cold and moist, phlegmatic, calm and unemotional. Yellow bile, fire, hot and dry, choleric, irritable and aggressive. Black bile, earth, cold and dry, melancholic, sad and depressive. Illness wasn't from germs yet, it was dyscrasia, an imbalance of the humors. Too much or a corrupted humor would become disease. This worldview explained human suffering simply. A fever, for instance, was a sign of excess hot, moist blood. A runny nose indicated too much cold, moist phlegm. An angry outburst could be blamed on a surge of hot, dry, yellow bile. The physician's role was to find which humor was off and restore harmony. Treatments counteracted the excess quality. Hot disease, a cold diet, dry ailment, moistening herbs, a system of opposites, a cosmic balancing act. Bloodletting was the most direct, powerful tool. Blood, the most abundant humor, was often blamed. As the Roman Empire crumbled and Europe entered the Middle Ages, the teachings of Galen were preserved, primarily within the monasteries. Here, monks painstakingly copied ancient texts, ensuring that the theory of the four humors and the practice of bloodletting remained central to medical thought. However, a peculiar division of labor began to emerge. University-trained physicians considered themselves intellectuals who diagnosed illnesses based on humoral theory, but they deemed the physical act of cutting into a body to be beneath them. Surgery, including bloodletting, was seen as a manual craft, not a scholarly pursuit. This created a vacuum that was filled by a new and somewhat surprising class of practitioners, the barber surgeons. In medieval towns, barbers did more than just cut hair and shave beards. Their sharp razors and steady hands made them ideal candidates for performing minor surgical procedures. They pulled teeth, they set broken bones, and, most frequently, they performed bloodletting. The iconic red and white striped barber's pole is, in fact, a direct relic of this bloody trade. The red represents the blood, the white represents the bandages, and the pole itself symbolizes the staff that patients would grip to make their veins bulge. The barber surgeon became a familiar figure in every community, the go-to person for the common citizen seeking a quick and affordable bleeding to cure their ills or simply to maintain their humoral balance as a preventative measure. The zodiac calendars, which were immensely popular, dictated the best times for the procedure. It was a dangerous game of chance, governed by stars and ancient theories rather than clinical evidence. The act of releasing blood from the body required a specialized and often intimidating array of instruments. Over the centuries, artisans crafted these tools with a combination of functional purpose and at times surprising artistry. The most common tool was the lancet, a small, double-edged blade that could be used to make a precise incision in a vein. Early lancets were simple, but by the 18th and 19th centuries, they were often housed in elegant cases made of tortoiseshell or mother-of-pearl, transforming a brutal instrument into an object of status for the esteemed physician. For those who preferred a more mechanical approach, there was the scarificator. This frightening-looking device was a metal box, usually brass, containing multiple hidden blades set on a spring. When a trigger was released, the blades would shoot out and create a series of parallel cuts in the skin. This was often used for a technique called cupping, where the scarified area would then be covered with a heated glass cup. As the cup cooled, it created a vacuum that drew the blood out of the shallow incisions. The scarificator offered a way to bleed a patient with speed and consistency, though the sight and sound of the spring-loaded blade snapping against the skin must have been terrifying for the person on the receiving end. Another key instrument, particularly favored for veterinary use, but also employed on humans, was the fleam. This tool typically had several blades of different sizes that folded into a handle, much like a pocket knife. The fleam was not used to slice a vein, but to strike it. The practitioner would place the pointed tip of the blade over the targeted vein and give the back of it a sharp tap with a small wooden stick called a blood stick. Finally, no discussion of bloodletting tools would be complete without mentioning the humble bleeding bowl. Many were marked with graduated lines on the inside, allowing the physician to measure exactly how many ounces of blood had been removed. These bowls, now collector's items, are a chilling reminder of the sheer volume of blood that was routinely drained from the sick and suffering in the name of healing. For centuries, the practice of bloodletting stood as an unassailable pillar of medicine. To challenge it was to challenge Galen, Hippocrates, and the accumulated wisdom of generations. Yet, by the 18th and 19th centuries, the first cracks began to appear. A new spirit of inquiry, born of the Enlightenment, was sweeping through the sciences. physicians started to favor direct observation and statistical analysis over blind adherence to classical texts. Men like Pierre-Charles Alexandre, while Louis in France began to conduct clinical studies. In the 1830s, Louis studied pneumonia patients, comparing those who were bled with those who were not. His numerical method revealed a shocking truth. The bled patients fared significantly worse and had a higher mortality rate. This skepticism was bolstered by new scientific discoveries. More powerful microscopes led to the rise of cell theory and eventually germ theory. Louis Pasteur, Robert Koch showed diseases were caused by microscopic organisms, not humoral imbalances. That discovery made the theoretical basis of bloodletting obsolete. If illness was caused by germs, removing blood was not only useless but actively harmful. The era of bleeding patients to health was finally and mercifully over. While the widespread practice of bloodletting has been thoroughly discredited, its ghost has not vanished entirely from the world of medicine. In a fascinating twist of history, a highly controlled and targeted form of the procedure, now known as therapeutic phlebotomy, remains a vital treatment for a small number of specific medical conditions. For patients with hemochromatosis, regularly removing blood is the most effective way to prevent toxic iron buildup in the liver and heart. For individuals with polycythemia vera, phlebotomy helps reduce blood thickness, lowering the risk of clots and strokes. This modern application is a world away from the old ways. Not balancing imaginary humors were but precise, measurable blood tests. Amount removed is carefully calculated, used for a narrow, well-understood set of problems. The old technique redeemed by modern science. The story of bloodletting is a humbling lesson for medicine, a stark reminder of the dangers of medical dogma and the importance of questioning established practices. For over 2 millennia, physicians acted with best intentions. Their failure was methodology, not malice. Standing in the shoes of someone from a bygone era, long before germs, cells, clinical trials, would you have trusted the wisdom of the day?